Okay, so now then, up here on my blackboard, and in that picture that in the book, we have here a heaven. Come on, I'm not very good at writing on a horizontal plane. One heaven. Now it doesn't tell us which one it is, does it? But we can find out pretty quick. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was up on the deep face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the water. So what covered the earth? Water. Okay, so I'm going to make some quigglers. Just say, here's the earth, here's the water all over the face of the earth. Verse 3, and God said, let there be light, and there was light. What's the Hebrew word for light? Or. O-R, or, translated. Now, if you look in your book, we'll take the book and we'll read a statement from the Spirit of Prophecy, from a little book called My Life Today at the bottom of the page. My Life Today, 138, paragraph 6. When God had made our world, and darkness was up on the face of the deep, he said, let there be light, and there was light. What verse is she quoting? Genesis 1:3. 1:3, on day one. Okay? And God saw the light, that it was good. Now listen. Shall we close our houses and exclude from them the light which God has pronounced good? If I get up right now and draw the drapes, what am I shutting out? Sunlight. So right there she's calling that light on day one sunlight, which the Hebrew word can be translated sun or light, or put them together under the same wording, O-R, and you have sunlight. So there's beginning to form the fact that the sun had to be there on the first day. I'll tell you a story. I should have told you this to begin with. The reason I got into this years ago, I studied with a Nazarene boy, man, his wife and 2 little kids. And it took me a long time, 2 years. But I told Gary, and I said, now, coming to the Sabbath, I said, now Gary, the sun has to rise 6 times to bring us the Sabbath. That's fine. And I said, now I'll explain it. You can't use your watch. That's Roman time. You use God's clock, the sun. It's the only thing that can bring us the Sabbath. The moon can't. It draws its light from the sun. The stars can't. They shine all the time. The only reason they show up at night is because it's darker. I said the sun's the only thing that can bring us the Sabbath. Okay? Now I said, if you left here on Sunday and went out in the desert without a watch, all you got to do is watch that sun rise and set 6 times, and you'll keep the same Sabbath out there that I'll keep in here. They accepted that, was baptized. A few months went by, and they stopped by one Sabbath afternoon. They said, hey, Gary and I was talking, he said, Cork, I'd like to go through Creation Week with you. And I said, fine. So I didn't know better, so when we came to the 4th day, I said, okay, Gary, God created the sun, moon, and stars on the 4th day. Out of that Davenport, he came over, and as he used to always do, shook his fist in front of me, and he said, Cork, you told me the sun had to rise and set 6 times to bring me the Sabbath. And I said, it does, Gary. What's your problem? He said, you tell me how the sun can rise and set 6 times between day 4 and day 7. And I had no answer, absolutely none for the man. Floored me. And boy, he got really upset. He was that kind of a guy. If I made a mistake, he'd sure bothered him. And so I had to get in and do some searching. It took me quite a while to do it. Then I got a hold of him, I straightened it out. And so that's how I got into this study. Okay, so God said, let there be light, and there was light. And what did I do with the chalk so I can make light? Now I know which heaven this is. Because that's right. No, it's the second heaven from our earth out.
Oh, yeah, because of the planet.
This is the planet heaven because there's a planet in it called the sun. Now, we'll know that when the sun was made, the moon was made, and the stars were made also. All on the first day. because it's created.
Yeah, how do you distinguish the first heaven?
There's
the planet heaven and there's the...
The bird heaven is next to us. We'll find out on day 2. We'll show you that it's next to the earth.
Okay.
Then further out is the planet heaven. And the way out is God's heaven.
Okay. Okay.
Because Paul said he was caught up to the third heaven. Okay, verse 4. And God saw the light, that it was good, and God divided the light from the darkness. So there's your darkness. So now then I'm going to do a little bit of imagination here. Now then we've got light and we got darkness, haven't we? Next verse will tell you what he called them. And God called the light what? Day. So now we have a day and we have a night. All on day 1. Now I want you to notice, in the day that he created, he has made heaven, earth, water, day, and night. Created them. Now, in my book, Testimonies 8, if you haven't got it, write it down. Testimonies 8, 258. She says, in the formation of our world, God was not indebted to pre-existing matters. The Bible says he spoke. And it was so. So you see, when you run into the word created, it's being made, something being made out of non-existing matter. But when you run into the word make and made, it's existing matter. Once you can get that settled, you can read Genesis just as slick as a whistle. Now, let's go to that in the evening and the morning. Oh, excuse me. And he called the light day, the darkness he called night. Now, I want you to jump over to verse 16. And God made, not B-A-R-A, but Asha, A-S-A-H, God made 2 great lights, light givers, remember? The greater light to rule the day and the lesser light to rule the night. If there was day on day 1 and night on day 1, what had to be there to rule it?
The moon at night?
That's right. The sun and the moon had to be there. If God has a day and it has a night, then they were there to rule it. Now I'm going back to my page again in my book, and I'm going to have you look on page 168. Well, let's see there. Wait a minute, there is another statement on 167 I want you to look at. Of each successive day of creation, the sacred records declared that it consisted of the evening and morning, like all other days that have followed. Like all other days that have followed. Do we have evening and morning for this day? Mm-hmm. Then that's exactly what happened on day 1, right? What makes evening and morning on our day today?
Sunrise and set.
That's right. So what was making evening and morning on day 1? Sunrise and set. Okay, let's go another step further on the next page. Of the first day employed in the work of creation is given the record the evening and the morning were the first day. And the same in substance is said of each of the first 6 days of creation. Each of these periods, inspiration declares to have been a day consisting of evening and morning like every other day since that time. In regard to the work of creation itself, the divine testimony, he spake and it was done, he commanded and it stood fast. So again she says, this day is exactly like any of the 6 days of creation. And so if we have evening and morning, the sun makes evening and morning on this day, the sun had to be there to make evening and morning on every one of those days, and we'll find out if that's true. The next one is a powerful one. Testimonies of Ministers, page 136, paragraph 1 and 2. God speaks to the human family in language they can comprehend. He does not leave the matter so indefinite that human beings can handle it according to their theories, and that's exactly what we have done. I'm sorry, but it is. When the Lord declared he had made the world in 6 days and rested on the 7th day, He means the day of 24 hours. How do we get a 24-hour day? What makes a 24-hour day?
Revolution.
Revolution of the earth on its axis in relationship to what?
Sun.
To the sun. So if the first day was 24 hours long, the earth rotated on its axis in relationship to what? The sun. Next statement on that same page is, God made the world in 6 literal days. That's one I was telling you about. So verse 1 has to be part of those 6 literal days, because that's the only verse that tells you when he made it, created it. Next one, Spiritual Gifts, volume 90. Or, excuse me, Spiritual Gifts, volume 3, page 90. I was then carried back to the creation and was shown that the first week, in which God performed the work of creation in 6 days and rested on the 7th day, was just like every other week. Folks, do you realize that if we continue to teach this, we're going to be in trouble, in that early time of trouble, when we are trying to prove that we cannot keep Sunday, but God's Sabbath, we are going to hit a brick wall with our own teaching? Because they'll ask us to prove. They'll say, but Sunday's the 7th day. And we'll say, no, it isn't. Sabbath isn't. And we start talking about the sun, and we don't even have it there on the first 3 days. And do you realize that if there was no sun on Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday of the first week, but there was on the second week, those 2 weeks aren't even the same? And God, in truth, his creation wasn't finished on that first week, because he had to add 3 days of sunlight on the second week? See how confusing it can get? And yet, we got it right from God through Sister White here. It says, the great God, no, the rest of the 7 days are like every other. The great God in his day of creation and day of rest measured off the first cycle as a sample for successive weeks till the close of time. The weekly cycle has been preserved and brought down through Bible history, originated in the great facts of the first 7 days. Do you realize the Sabbath is the only feast or celebration that keeps falling on the exact day all the time? The others move just like your birthday does or Christmas does. The sun counts off the weeks, the moon counts off the months. Okay, let's go back and find day 2. Verse 6. And God's, by the way, the earth has rotated on its axis, and the sun has rose and set, and the evening and morning was the first day. One time, the sun has rose and set, just exactly what we need. We got to have that sun rising and setting 6 times between day 1 and day 7, or we're going to be in trouble. Okay, verse 6. And God said, let there be a firmament in the midst of the water, and let it divide the waters from the waters. And God, what's the next word? Made. What is it? Asha. Asha. It is not created. Now I want you to keep your eyes open, and as you read here your own Bible, read it and see if you find another word, created. And let me know if you do. We found it in day 1, but we're not finding it yet in day 2. Because the word made. So he's making something out of pre-existing material. And God made the firmament and divided the water which was under the firmament from the water which was above the firmament. And it was so. So what did he do? He took some water off of this earth, and he put it out here. Now, in between that, he said, there's a firmament. There's a gulp of air, a firmament. Now, let me ask you. Now, let me ask you. Did he create the water on day 2 so that he could put it out there to case in that firmament? It was created here. Did he create the earth that this water came off on day 2? No, he created it here. Did he create the firmament that was caught between those two bodies of water? No, he created it here. You see, everything he created on the first day, he's beginning to use now. Now let's go on and see what he called it. And God made the firmament, divided the water which was under the firmament. There's the water under the firmament, from the water which was above the firmament. And it was so, and God called the firmament what? You need a Bible?
Heaven.
Heaven. Heaven. How many heavens?
I've got
Oh, you got one.
I need one. Thanks.
Why don't you speak up sooner? Have you got one? No. You got one? Then go get one.
Oh,
Really?
really?
I thought it was a little space there that gives us.
Well, actually, it's all this area.
I don't know.
Well, how do you get that it was?
The firmament was existing, but then he created it on the first day.
Because where's the sun, moon, and stars right now? Are they in the firmament?
So that's part of the heavens.
The firmament is
Well, yeah.
space, is it space, outer space?
Yeah, it's space. It's space. Right outside this window is firmament,
Okay.
It goes all the way up.
Oh,
It goes all the way up.
but it's divided. Divided in how it's used.
Oh,
The planets are in one circle, and the birds, or whatever, airplanes, or whatever you want to put in there, is in the one we're talking about now. Which is the closest to the earth? One on day 1, or verse 1, or the one here in verse, well, pages turn.
It's the second day the closest to the earth. Is that where all the oxygen is and all the ozone and all that?
Ozone. Ozone comes in, I mean, if you want to get scientific. But just here, we got our second heaven, H-E-A-V-E-N, come on.
The one closest to the earth. Because when you say second heaven, it says that we have the first and then the second left.
Okay, now counting from the earth out, this is heaven 1, this
Oh,
is heaven 2, right? And how many heavens did we say there was on this?
3.
You see now, if you go to those other translations and make the first one in Genesis 1:1 plural, then we end up with 3 heavens connected to this earth. Because in the beginning he created 2 of them, heavens. Now on the second day he's made another one. But if you use the King James, it balances out perfect. He created one on day 1, but he made the second one on day 2. The difference between created and made.
So he made an additional one on 2. So which one did he make on 2?
The bird,
The bird.
because it's right here next to this earth. This one is farther out. The planet is farther out, so this is the moon, sun, and stars are further from the earth than the birds are, right?
So they're like what we call outer space.
Yeah, there's a scientific name for it. I can't handle them. I just made it my own. It's something simple, like I said. I know the stars and moons in one circle around the earth, which is in one heaven, and the birds fly in the one lower one next to the earth, which is the one that man travels in.
I have a question
Okay?
on the water.
Okay.
The water above the firmament and the water below the firmament.
He divided the water, and he put the firmament in between, the water above the firmament and water below the firmament. So there's 2 bodies of water.
Okay, there's the ocean, like the
yeah.
ocean,
The
and then
whole earth was
there's...
covered in water,
Mm-hmm.
still, there was no division of land yet.
Right.
And he
Oh, so he
took part of
divided.
that water, he took part of that water and put it around the earth.
A real cloudy day.
Yeah, very cloudy day.
Okay.
I'm lost.
Okay, now,
Water around the earth.
right, we have it all the time in the winter time.
Oh,
Covered.
clouds.
Sure, just let it be a
Sure.
set of clouds.
Okay.
Condensation.
Because that's what that is. Clouds is nothing but condensed water. You can take water, turn it to steam, capture it, cool it, and turn it back to cloud. I mean, back to water, can't you?
You know, when you read it, you just you don't get it. Yeah. You don't think of it like that. You think of it in your own way. Because they didn't talk like we do.
No, I think that's part of it. It's the water that he put away in the storehouses for
Mm-hmm.
the flood.
Yeah, I haven't brought that out yet. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. Now, when we get to the other place, we'll find out what happened to that, but, right.
Is that why he put it there?
I don't know. Well, truthfully, no, because he still is keeping up his
Ay, what a powerful God when you think about things.
think how he's figured it all out. Now I want to show you something. You see, the reason the sun cannot reach the earth is because, I don't know, I drowned one time, that's the truth, down at Arlington, Oregon. When I went down once, I came back up and hollered, and I went down again and came back up and hollered, and I don't know why, I just relaxed. I wasn't a bit afraid. I just turned my eyes up and I watched that water, and it got light green, darker green, darker green, darker green, and when I came to, I was on the bank. A guy had heard me and got an 01-6 and an old boat, and he rolled out, and I think that's the reason I'm bald-headed, because he said I was fighting to come up, although I was unconscious, and he reached down and he was whip like that, and he grabbed me by the hair and pulled me out. But that got darker as I went down, and that wasn't very far down. So the water was deep enough over the earth, the sun could not penetrate the water and reach the earth. Now then, what has it got? It's got two problems. It's got a cloudy day, as we'll say, or heavy cloud belt. It can't penetrate it, and the earth is still covered with water, so the sun still can't reach the earth. Make sense? Any questions? Let's go back and reread it. Let's start with verse 26 and see if it makes sense. And God said, let us... No, my page turned. Let's go to 26. That's way at the end of it. Let's go back here to verse 6. And God said, let there be a firmament in the midst of the water. Now, my 4 here says expansion in the margin. In the midst of the water, and let it divide the water from the waters. So that firmament kept the two waters apart, right? Okay. Verse 8. And God did call the firmament heaven. And the evening and the morning were the second day. So what's the earth done now? It's rotated on its axis in relationship to the sun, and evening and morning marked it off. Now we've had our sun setting and rising 2 times. I tell you, I was so excited over this when I saw the truth of it, because the other way I cannot prove my Sabbath. This way I can.
This way, when we get to verse 4.
Okay, we'll look at verse 9 now. And God said, let the waters under the heaven be gathered together unto one place. So what happened to all this water?
So land would show up.
Now I'm going to cover in this and try to make it a little bit. Okay, there's the sun, there's the moon, there's the stars, there's day and there's night. Yeah. Now day 3, what happened to the water that was on the earth? Let's find out. It tells you right there. And God said, let the water under the heaven be gathered together unto one place, and let the dry land appear. And it was so. And God called the dry land earth, and the gathering together of the water called he seas. And God saw that it was good. So what happened to the water that was on the face of the earth?
Remember, it disappeared.
He gathered it all into one place. And the seas was made, right? Now that took care of this water. So let me ask you again. Did God create the earth on the third day so he'd have a dry land? When did he create it? Day 1. Did he create the water to make the seas on day 3? When did he create them? On day 1. So you see, we're finding that it's actually true. God accumulated everything on day 1 that he's going to use the rest of the week to build. Huh?
I think I'm getting it.
Well, you know, I always think of a lot of contractors. I've been around. I never was a builder. I couldn't build a birdhouse if I had to, but I sold appliances for 23 years and delivered and serviced propane appliances. And I've been around a lot of construction, and more than once I have seen a contractor bring in truckloads of lumber, truckloads of piping, truckloads of cement, or it used to be the old cement where they got the mixers, and they have them stacked there ready to use when they got ready to build the house. Well, that's all God did on day one.
Stockpiled, huh?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Now then, so he made the seas, and we still have this belt of water out here. We still have the sun fighting it. It still can't reach the earth. The sun, the moon, and stars there. We still have the day. We still have the night. And the sun has rotated, the earth has rotated on its axis the third day. And evening and morning has come and gone because the sun was there.